I'll let you know when it pops up in the studio.
Hey everybody, we're getting started here.
It is live.
We are fixing to go live on the YouTube. We'll have a few minutes of chat before it does. And every day I'm going to make my first post on the chat before I start doing this. So I'm going to type this up. We're here. Jen Ryan's with us for this draft tonight, and Emil Kadlec, of course, as always. I'm Bob Harris, in case you're wondering or have not figured it out yet. And that's entirely likely. We'll be doing a 12-team PPR draft tonight, live with a number of mock drafters on the Sleeper app. And seems like we've got a full house for the draft, which is always nice. Any strategies going in, Jen?
Yeah, so kind of where I'm at, not fully at the end of the round, not exactly in the middle of the round. I kind of like to see what value falls. Sort of why I went with this pick. Like specifically in the first round, I'm going to see if any of those maybe top 5 guys slipped to the 8th position. And I really like where I'm at here too, because you don't have to wait too much around the turn. So I guess my strategy, I always let the draft come to me, but I'll start out with really just trying to put together a well-balanced team based off of my draft position.
Emil, you picked which pick to start?
Number 2.
Any particular reason? Because you were greedy for... Oh, and we are live, by the way. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, I don't pick a lot in the first 4. I thought I'd try it, see how it goes. Keep away from Jen. I think that's the most important thing.
All right, so welcome everybody. If you're tuning in on the YouTube channel here, we are live. We're doing a sleeper draft on the Sleeper app. We have a 12-team PPR, 16-round draft, Emil. What are the position
14,
breakdown?
No kickers, no defense.
Ah, yes, way to do it. So we've got, I'm in the wrong draft. Possibly. No, there we have it. I'm in the right place.
The right draft.
Is this a super flex?
No. There's
Okay.
2 drafts up there. You got to pick the right one. It's a 15. No, is it a 15-rounder? No, it's a 14-rounder.
I see it. Yeah, I see 14 here. All right.
I'm picking the wrong one myself. Okay.
So thanks for joining us. This will let the people build up a little bit. The mock draft will start shortly, and we do have a full house. Thanks, everyone who's jumping in. Jen, you picked the 8th pick in Sleeper. You get to go in and claim a spot. What was your reasoning there?
I kind of want to just see what falls there. I like drafting. I will say I don't like drafting top 3 or bottom 3. So it's just a sweet spot for me.
Anybody you're targeting in particular? I'm sure all the other mock drafters are listening and would love to know this.
Well, I will say one thing I have experimented from this spot in some best balls that I do is sometimes I take the 2 big tight ends here just to kind of see how my roster shakes out. So if you guys leave Kelsey and Kittle to me, I might go with that start just to see what kind of team I could build locking down those 2 guys.
Sounds good. And Emil was just looking to stay away from Jen. No, Emil's looking
Stay away
to
from
Saquon
Jen.
Barkley. Everyone knows he's a big Saquon Barkley adherent, or not.
Yeah, I'll probably taking Barkley here. And see where it comes up on that bottom and turn on the 3. So I got a pretty short area there. So you ready to start this?
Yeah, let's go ahead and crank it up for everybody. If you have questions as we're drafting, doesn't have to be about the draft. You can ask us anything as the email advertised, and we'll be happy to answer any, just whatever fantasy questions you have. But if you do have questions about the draft, go ahead and ask those in the chat as well, and I'll direct them to the drafter that I can. Emil and Jen, both with me here. Started out, no surprise, Christian McCaffrey, the pretty much consensus first pick overall in every draft I've been in. Jen, have you seen him go anywhere but first in a draft? I guess I've seen one where he went second.
I haven't gotten a lot of early picks in my best ball drafts, truthfully, so I don't really notice it, but I can't imagine I'd argue 99% of my drafts probably have McCaffrey going first overall.
Yeah, pretty chalky start until you get to that 4th, and then everything's, some people like Dalvin Cook. some people, I mean me. You might see Michael Thomas go there. You might see Alvin Kamara go there. We'll see how early Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes, the current rocket ride to the top of the ADP ranks, not without good reason. Michael Thomas goes 5th. So 2 Saints in the first 5 picks, the 2 Saints that matter most, safe to say. So we're in the middle of the first round, heading into pick 6 here. Maybe we'll see the first Chief off the board, maybe not. Jen, well, I don't want to ask you right before you're about to make your pick. I'll ask Emil.
Yes.
How late would you be surprised if you saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire go?
Bottom of the first. I think he's going to go 7, 8, 9, maybe 10.
I think he might go earlier. We've got 13 seconds left on the clock. Moving right along. A lot of news today. If you have not been to the footballdiehards.com website, go there. Tons of content up, articles, videos. John Laub has some great stuff prepping you for DFS. He's going to do a quarterbacks school as well. So we had our first time out, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, probably at the top of the ADP rankings, goes. Nothing more irritating than that, Docky Do.
Yes.
Whoever's in the top of the queue, if you're the person drafting after them, very frustrating. So hopefully that person gets in line and starts picking. Again, if you're on YouTube, feel free to ask us questions. I will relay them to the drafters, or I'll answer them myself. I'm fine with whatever. We're here to help. And lots going on today. Again, beyond that, plenty of news and information. As I mentioned, go to the site, check the camp news, check the articles, check the rankings, constantly adjusted to help you do through these very drafts. Tyreek Hill to Jersey Jen Ryan. Tell me more, Jersey Jen.
Yeah, I just sat here telling you guys how I was going to go tight end, and then I totally switched it up and went Tyreek. I mean, I guess you got to be flexible in these. I mean, I wanted him on my team. I'm not so sure, he would have made it back to me in the next pick. I think he's a 100-target guy, obviously, on one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. If I don't get Michael Thomas on a team, he's the guy I'm looking at for volume.
Emil, you went with Saquon Barkley to open up the Giants schedule. I think a really tough first 5 weeks. Week 16 against Baltimore. The offensive line, they've added some pieces. They also lost a piece, maybe the most important piece, Nate Solder, to the COVID opt-out. Any concerns about that strength of schedule kind of situation? Or is that something you just look over when you have a guy that talented?
Well, it is a concern, but you got a great talent. I hate to say, that would just change my opinion of what I'm going to do. His rookie year, he was such an incredible receiver. And I really like that little frosting on the cake. It's a great receiver. Of course, Zeke Elliott is. And there's a lot of guys that are great receivers, but I think that really adds. That Miles Sanders, I think that's one of the reasons he's a first-round pick, is because he's a great talent, but also he catches the ball so well for Philly.
Averaged 10 yards a catch last year. It was pretty remarkable. 509 yards on his 50 catches, and came on as a runner, struggled a little bit early, but now we hear, if you check the camp news, once again, Doug Peterson planting the flag that we all want planted, right? We all want to hear that our guy is the feature back, and that's been the complaint for the Philadelphia Eagles under Doug Peterson, is that, he's a committee running back guy, and the people who cover that team closely will tell you that's because he never had Miles Sanders. So we're about to see if that test plays out. I'll just get your guys' opinion here. I'll start with you, Emil, that 12th pick. That Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon duo, I don't see a lot. I think that's a pretty damn good start to a draft.
Yeah, that is darn good. And I think a lot of times, it is a PPR, but that's a little bit of a fall for Derrick to get to that spot. So a good opportunity for, Michael Silvas?
Yeah. Looking at my rankings, I have Derrick Henry 8th. I have him at 8th. I have Joe Mixon, though, at 6th. I'm super high on Joe Mixon for a lot of reasons we can get into or not. But, Jen, just curious about your thought on that start for the Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, and then your own start, getting Aaron Jones to go with Tyreek Hill.
I mean, I didn't think, like, when I passed on Derrick Henry, I started watching the game of chicken. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to get out of the first round, right? And then for Michael to stack him with Joe Mixon, I mean, he got arguably 2 first-round talents, one at the very end and one at the beginning of the second. And then I'm here looking at Chris Joel Smith's team, and he went with the start that I exactly said I was going to go with, and wound up backing away from, stacking the 2 big tight ends. And then for me, I went with Aaron Jones. It's hard with Chubb, with Kareem Hunt there. You know, I think with Aaron Jones, really it's going to have the volume. I know, this picture of the rookie that they drafted and his big muscular body broke the internet to speak. But Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers had a really good rapport last year. He's used in the passing game. He had a couple of receiving touchdowns. So as my RB1, I like him there.
The A.J. Dillon photos that are taking the interwebs by storm, rightly so, but they don't necessarily mean he's going. So the thing that caught me, Jen and Emil, I know you're about to make your pick here. Ezekiel Elliott, drafter, is going to take. I have a couple interesting picks. The auto draft went Patrick Mahomes, so that is a Chiefs-heavy team by serendipitous means for Decky Do, the non-drafter. Emil is on the clock, but thought it was interesting that Matt LaFleur was commenting on A.J. Dillon, saying, I've never seen a guy like this before. Now, this is interesting when he was speaking of A.J. Dillon, the size and thickness of his body. This is interesting because Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans before he joined the Packers, where they have a running back named Derrick Henry, who is quite noticeably big and thick. So just interesting that he would make that comment. Teammates are equally impressed. Emil, so you've gone, Saquon Barkley gives you a huge floor at running back, right? Is that why you've gone with 2 wide receivers?
Somewhat, and also we've got well over 10 running backs taken, and we only had about 4 wide receivers, and so there was a lot of value there. The guy took Mark Andrews in between my 2 picks, which would have been very tempting. I'm almost glad he did that, kind of. So, yeah, both those reasons.
Very interesting play, and I see this a lot. When you start with Christian McCaffrey, you feel very liberated, very free to do the Lamar Jackson, maybe a Mark Andrews. I just think it gives you a lot of confidence to maybe make moves that you otherwise would not have made because you have that potential 400-point PPR scorer at the top of your roster, and then you can add. You just feel empowered to leverage that pick to get a Lamar Jackson, whether you take Mark Andrews next or not. Jen, how do you feel about that start?
It's nice. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with pairing, the quarterback and whoever's going to be catching the ball. I mean, but look at it. He's got the top running back, top quarterback, a top 3 tight end. It's a really good start. I'm eyeing up Decky Do right now and hoping he doesn't time out because I had my fingers crossed that Mike Evans might fall to me. It's the Mike Evans Chris Godwin debate is one of my favorite things of this offseason.
Looks like Dicky Doo is on our doo-doo list and probably shouldn't be in any more mocks this year.
Tell me which one you prefer as the time runs out on this.
Evans. I mean, what he's done every
cheaper, or because of what he's done.
I mean, he's cheaper. He's a 1,000-yard guy every season of his career. He has Tom Brady throwing him the football, and the hammy's a problem with him. I feel like that was a lingering thing last year. And I love the way that Godwin came on, but prior to last year, I think Godwin was like wide receiver 75, and then like wide receiver, he took this huge jump. I like Evans' consistency, and I cannot wait to see what he does.
You took the other Mike Evans, and his name is Adam Thielen, maybe a slightly lesser passing attack, but a pretty good player, right?
Yeah, of course. And at this point right now, I'm taking wide receiver 1s on teams, like clear wide receiver. Stephon Diggs is out of the picture. The target for Adam Thielen this year is probably going to be pretty unbelievable.
Emil, looking at Team 3, the team drafting right after you, that would be a running back heavy start. Your thoughts?
3 running backs. Yeah, that's gutsy, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch that team and see what wide receivers he gets and tight end. Because obviously, if he can find a couple solid wide receivers, same thing for Team 1, who's got Lamar Jackson, Andrews, and a running back, CMC. If they can find some receivers to succeed with, and of course this is a mock, so we're not going to find out, it's going to be a powerful team, but that's the challenge.
My general feeling is I feel pretty comfortable, with the receiving depth just in general. And maybe that's every year, but it seems like even more so this year. Just like quarterback depth, I feel comfortable taking quarterbacks in just about every tier. I feel okay taking wide receivers in every tier, but there's a later tier, that 5th, 6th, 7th round range, where I feel like there's gold to be mined, whether it's T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Green, Devontae Parker, Marquise Brown. There's a ton of guys in that range that I really love. And I feel like it gives me the flexibility to do, I don't know if I've done that 3 running back start, but maybe the running back Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews start, I feel like you can come up with some pretty good receivers. We'll see what that drafter does going around. There's another 3 running back starting on the other end of the board. Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette. I like that one a little bit because it gives you a little variation in the theme, right, with Eckler, and we'll see what wide receiver or what other. And the first wide receiver off the board for that team is DJ Moore. How do you feel about that start?
Both those are good. I think if you're going to go 3 running backs, you need to plan out what receivers that you're getting, what value receivers you have, and you have got a plan that a certain way down this list you're going to get three receivers that you really feel comfortable in. I wouldn't just do it just to say, oh, now what am I going to get? I think I need a plan.
Yeah, the 3 running back teams that include the team with Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. They added Jonathan Taylor. Reporting today, if you hit the Football Diehards August update, you'll see he's been tearing off some big runs. So I think it's going to be hard to keep him on the bench. Sorry, Marlon Mack. I feel bad for you, man. Maybe that's me projecting. I have a lot of shares. Another wide receiver. Look, this is. I mean, people will call this a modified 0 RB or whatever, Jen. Already, it's not that. I don't think yet, but I mean, you are going wide receiver heavy. Has that been your approach often?
I mean, when I'm locking down an RB1 like Aaron Jones, I mean, it's a little bit of that, but also, I mean, I just got Odell Beckham in like the 4th round. I can't wrap my head around that, and that's kind of where he's going. It's not like he's a screaming value there, but for me, he is. I mean, I understand he had the down year. He was hurt. He was on a new team. When I see him sitting there in the 4th round, I like my eyes pop out of my head, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Odell Beckham.
So we're in the middle of the 4th round, 23 running backs off the board. This has kind of been the trend, right? This is what we see, Emil. I mean, we're not at the drop-off yet, I don't think, in a 14-team league like a draft I just did this weekend. You would be in panic mode. There are still running backs left, but that really seems to be the way drafts are going this season.
Yeah, you're getting, right now we've got 22 running backs gone and about 14 wide receivers, and the wide receivers obviously have making up some steam here in the last half a round to a round. Yeah, I think people are just really wanted to secure these running backs because they drop off. And there's a guy I would always like to want to take is A.J. Brown, and somehow I don't get him very often.
Yeah, Decky Doo gets a lot of interesting players that both you and Jim would like. Doing it on auto pick. Congratulations to you, Decky Doo. By the way, if you're on the YouTube, feel free to ask us questions. Just jump into the chat. Be happy to answer them. They don't have to be about this draft in particular. They could be about any draft or anything or any questions you might have pertaining to your fantasy football team. And we'd be happy to answer them. So here's an interesting first receiver for this team. I thought the Allen Robinson and DJ Moore's for the other 3 running back teams were pretty good. I think Juju Smith-Schuster taken around early for a 3 running back team is good. And DK Metcalf is your wide receiver 1. Would that be okay with you, Jen?
I mean, not as my 1. It's tough because, you do have Lockett there. I probably would have looked for someone who was most likely a clear-cut wide receiver 1 on the team. I think, DJ Shark is sitting there. That might not have been a bad option. Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin. But, I mean, I certainly don't hate the pick. I mean, DK is fantastic. I just would probably have been looking for a guy who was more of a true wide receiver one, maybe right there.
Well, what kind of expectations do you have for the Jaguars offense, Jen?
Oh boy, I mean, I never really have a ton of expectations for them, but I mean, garbage time is a real thing, and we saw it with Shark was a beast last year in his big games. I mean, I certainly like their passing game far more than I like their running game. I like any of these wide receivers over Leonard Fournette, for various reasons, but Fournette's talent, but also game script. They're going to be playing from behind a lot.
Emil, you got Zach Ertz in round 5. How pleased are you?
Not bad. I know a lot of people are a little down on him, and other receivers like Waller came on last year, so it's kind of changed the thing. But I kind of like it. I haven't had a chance to pick him. I won't get probably a chance coming back in the 6th round, and I've been looking at some other lower tight ends, so I actually like that. I think it's about as far as you could go to get him, so I'm happy with it.
I like the 5th round value. Pretty soon you'll have to have another running back. Jen, we have a question on the YouTube from Willie Scott. Wanted to ask about why the drafter might have taken 2 tight ends. You had talked about doing that. You want to talk about the logic behind such a start?
Yeah, so sometimes, I think especially with the way that tight ends have come on a little bit over the last 2-3 seasons, I think, if you lock down the top 2 guys at the position, I mean, you could be looking at a league winner on your hands. And really, I mean, George Kittle, similar to Emil's Zach Ertz pick, I would say. I mean, these guys are the wide receiver one on their team with the tight end tag, especially, with the Debo injury. When the Debo injury happened, everyone sort of was talking about adjust your wide receiver rankings. It's like, no, Kittle, this is just more for Kittle. These are 2 guys who have double-digit floors pretty much every single week. You can totally flex one of these guys every week over some of these running backs.
Yeah, you could definitely move them into flex. So good explanation there. And you just took Kareem Hunt, which I think is an interesting play. Talk a little bit about what you see his value being.
Honestly, full disclosure, I don't think I've ever taken Kareem Hunt this early.
Second running back now.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm not going to find a guy who's going to get a ton of carries, so I'm looking for somebody with passing upside and PPR scoring, and that's sort of why I went with Hunt here.
I wonder if Emil Kadlec might have been hoping that a Kareem Hunt came back to him. I know you've looked into the numbers there, Emil. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, last year, starting in Week 10 when he came back, he was an RB2. He was a decent RB2. So you got him in the 5th round as your second RB, and he could even be better this year, especially if the coaching staff and Baker does better. So nothing wrong with that pick. I don't really know his ADP off the top of my head, whether he would have lasted to your 6th round pick, but I like that pick.
I think he's been going a little higher. Just quickly, Coach Lambo on commenting that maybe the concussion to Nick Chubb is a factor. I mean, I don't know if it drives up the ADP at all for me, but it is worth noting. Well, you were going to say something, Jen?
Yeah, I actually forgot what I was going to say, if I'm being completely honest with you. But
just ADP on Hunt has been 507, so you're not overpaying for sure.
Okay, so I basically got him at where he's going. I mean, again, at this point, I'm looking for guys who catch the ball. Truthfully, the concussion did not factor into this, but I think if you're going to account for any injury in fantasy football, for me, it is concussions. Just because there's so many unknowns. It's a reason why I knock a guy like Sterling Shepard down a little bit in my rankings, because he's just had too many of them, and his recovery period is so long. It's just on the subject of it. It's really the only position that I sort of think about when I am drafting in terms of injury.
We're at that point in the draft where I feel uncomfortable. Yeah, once I get past David Montgomery, I feel like the heavy workload guys are through. I do think Kareem Hunt has that kind of upside, but DeAndre Swift went. Devin Singletary just went, reminding me that. I have a question as someone asking if Ridley, Woods, Kupp, Lockett, or Chark is having trouble deciding which in my mocks. Just in general, I think I'm probably saying the order would be Kupp, Ridley, Woods, Lockett, and Chark for me, or something. You might vary on Chark. I just don't know how good of an offense it's going to be. And Lockett has to be super efficient, but that's probably the order I would take them. Anyone else have a different view of that?
I think I'm definitely higher on Bobby Woods than you are.
I like Woods. I end up drafting him more than I draft Kupp because I like the little bit of a discount. So maybe a little more consistency there with him, Jen.
Oh, yeah, and I remember when he went over to the Rams, like even coming from Buffalo, there wasn't a ton of production in Buffalo, but when you looked at his usage, I mean, he's just always been a target guy. And for me, when I'm looking for receivers, I'll take volume, over pretty much anything else any day of the week.
We have one of the commenters, Rick Clote. I'll butcher anybody's name. Trust me, Rick. Rick is how I'll go. He liked the pick of Clyde Edwards-Helaire better than Dalvin Cook. I'll just say that was an auto pick, and so somebody got lucky. I like Cook better, but I mean, obviously I've talked about this before. We're drafting all these guys at anticipated ceilings, and we haven't necessarily seen Cooks yet, although he's hinted at it, I think, last year. But certainly Edwards-Helaire playing in that offense has a very high ceiling too. He also wondered if Derrick Henry was picked too low. My take is yes. I think everyone here at the table thinks he went lower than he has been going, for sure. And is it too low? We'll find out. Another auto pick for Dickie Doo gets Ronald Jones too. Probably one of the guys in Emil Kadlec's queue, as he has only Saquon Barkley as his running back.
Yep, that was my next pick, was Ronald Jones. Yep. So he's taken about 3 players that all of us wanted.
Yeah,
not bad for a guy with his eyes closed.
Yeah, the guys at the top of the ADP list in the Sleeper app are not surprising that they would also be the targets of others. So, Jen, looking at your roster as Emil prepares to pick and rejiggers his running back approach, Tyreek Hill, Aaron Jones, Adam Thielen, Odell Beckham, Kareem Hunt, and then you add what I consider to be a high upside play, Devontae Parker. We saw that upside last year. We've seen the downside or the low-end possibilities in previous years. What are you expecting from Parker this year?
I think it depends. Obviously, I'm expecting a lot of targets, playing from behind. Again, we talked about game script a little earlier. I want Fitzpatrick in there. My hope, I think if Fitzpatrick's in there, we're going to get a lot of those, what I like to call YOLO balls, where he just chucks it up. I think he'll be far more aggressive than Tua. So I'm looking at it like perhaps wide receiver 1 production for the first half of the season until the Dolphins are out of playoff contention and they yank Fitzpatrick for Tua. Again, my goal here now is I am still finding perceived wide receiver 1s on actual football teams on my fantasy team. I wanted to say one thing about the auto drafting, if I could, only because I've been in enough of these best ball leagues. It's actually not terrible to have an auto drafter in there because it sort of forces you to change your strategy a little bit. If you're eyeing up a guy towards the top of the queue and you have an auto drafter that's drafting ahead of you, you're going to have to pay attention to that because if you want that guy, now you have to jump for him or else he's automatically going to land on that guy's team.
So, Emil, you took J.K. Dobbins. The good news is J.K. Dobbins is not ready to settle for playing second fiddle to Mark Ingram. The bad news is Mark Ingram is still there, and indeed J.K. Dobbins will start the season as second fiddle. This is definitely an upside play, and I think you can get some depth later, right, or some guys that maybe can fill in until Dobbins maybe makes a move up the depth chart. Do you think that's going to happen, and when might it happen?
Yeah, well, here we are in round 6, and nothing's obvious, or they would have gone already. Certainly wanted Ronald Jones, and then most certs have kind of down on these days. But yeah, he's got potential to be in the second half of the season to be a very productive back. So yeah, I'm going to have to find some guys, 1 or 2 or so, that I can play here and there as my RB2, and I got to make that work for me, where I made a mistake.
I don't know if it was a mistake when you have Saquon Barkley, but you're definitely at a little bit of a disadvantage there. And this is where we, start talking about, guys, both of you, league winners, guys you're drafting late who maybe are going to have a greater role or in position to have a greater role. I won't ask you to identify any of them, but is that, maybe you can, as we go through the draft, point to guys that you think might be that type of league winning player. Willie Scott's asking, is the run on quarterback starting? I don't know if there is we really get a true run in 12 team drafts. I think, or at least single quarterback drafts. And I think the only time I worry about a run is in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. And only when I'm on the end of the draft. If I'm in the middle of a round, I feel pretty much okay that I can keep up with the flow. I also think a lot of times I've seen people, and I know I do this a lot, maybe I'm projecting a bit, Jen, and Emil, you can chip in too here. But I mean, I hit a point where if I don't love anybody, there's a quarterback at every tier that I can just plug into that spot and feel pretty good about. Dak, Russell Wilson, I think, in this range, there are guys later, there are guys earlier. If I'm just like, man, I don't like this guy, I'm going to draft the quarterback here. You guys have, Emil, your approach with that?
That's an excellent way to look at it. I've got some guys planned a little later on. When I mean later, the 8th, 9th to the 14th quarterback. But you're getting Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott after 6 people have already been taken on your roster. That's pretty good. What do you think, Jen?
It's not just them. I mean, Deshaun and Kyler. I mean, these are especially. It's so interesting that this whole group here went in the 7th round because all 4 of these quarterbacks have top 3 upside. So to see them all kind of go where they went is it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely a run. I don't know if it's going to continue on, but I mean, usually I see these guys start going, whether it's Dak or Kyler, maybe a little bit earlier, but kind of all of them are going or gone by this range. So maybe it's just everyone kind of playing catch up, but they like the value there. The running quarterbacks are starting to thin out. Not all the way, though. There's still some more. And that goes all the way down to my guy, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, who is pretty mobile, too. Usually available late. There are a number of the guys that have that high, what we perceive to be high floor. Josh Allen on that list as well. So plenty of supply still left. Tariq Cohen, Jen, is this are we going to look back and see the numbers we saw 2 seasons ago, or something? I mean, something in the middle. Last year was not good.
No, last year was not good. Tariq Cohen, I went with him because I missed on James White because of that Decky Doo timeout. I want the pass catchers right now. I much would have preferred James White. I've been looking at Matt Breida a lot here. I think Matt Breida is a guy who's so underrated. I just truthfully did not want to stack Dolphins. I don't think that's a very necessarily viable strategy. So it's more of the player I was looking for, and it just happens to be Cohen there.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about the running backs in Miami, you've got a couple guys that are both, viable. Jordan Howard going a little earlier. One of the issues there, though, is lousy offensive line play. Does that maybe make Breida of greater interest to you of that duo then, Jen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I hate to keep saying game script because I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but game script favors him. And, the checkdowns, I mean, a running back target is worth more fantasy-wise than a carry. So, give me the guys who are getting the targets, especially with this PPR scoring.
Emil, as you look at that team 12, the Michael Silvas team, it's coming together pretty nicely. I think they got 3 really solid receivers to follow up those 3 backs. They got Evan Ingram, then added another back. But talk about that 3 receiver role they went through.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Allen Robinson was a top 10 receiver last year. Will Fuller, if he stays healthy this year, he could be phenomenal. A.J. Green is scary, but potentially could do right well. And we've talked a lot about Evan Ingram, who, when healthy, is incredible tight end. So we got to hope he's healthy. If he is, that's great. And he fills in with Marlon Mack, who could have start in a few weeks and get some decent play. So excellent. He's done great.
Yeah, I think we're seeing. I think in some of these as well. Team 11 came back with DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Stephon Diggs, and CeeDee Lamb. That's 3 wide receiver ones for their team, followed up by a huge playmaking threat. Jen, that's a pretty good approach there, right? If you're starting 3 running backs.
Oh, of course. I mean, if once you lock down those running backs to grab receivers like that, I mean, Diggs, clear one, McLaurin, not just a clear one, but a clear one on one of these teams that's going to be throwing a lot. And then CeeDee Lamb, who at this point with the Dallas offense, it just might not matter where these receivers necessarily fall in the depth chart. I mean, they're going to be a high-scoring team, hopefully for my real-life purposes. And, guys like CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, they're really going to benefit in those games when Amari Cooper sees shadow coverage.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think Deontay Johnson, interesting play down on team number 1. So we have Christian McCaffrey and Mark Ingram as the running backs. Lamar Jackson, obviously, quarterback Mark Andrews. So now the wide receiving core, I kind of like the way this worked out. Tyler Lockett, Michael Gallup, Deontay Johnson. I think Tyler Lockett's a great high-end play. Russell Wilson talked about throwing more. But man, Michael Gallup just seems like a really super high floor player. Jen, I know you watch the Cowboys closely. How appealing is Gallup to you? And what about Deontay Johnson as well?
For me, with Gallup, he's of the Cowboys receivers. When you look at ADP versus projected role, he's the guy I'm drafting. He almost reminds me of those old days, Terrence Williams and Tony Romo, like a similar kind of receiver. And then Deontay Johnson. I mean, if we get 2019 Juju Smith-Schuster in 2020 and a healthy Ben Roethlisberger, this guy's going to have a huge season.
I keep thinking, we often get asked about players that nobody's talking about that should be drafted. I wonder if James Washington shouldn't be on that list.
Yeah, and he's a guy who just goes undrafted. So you can get him last player taken. What were you going to say, Jen?
I was going to say from that same offense, Benny Snell. If you're looking for an upside backup running back, I mean, we saw what D'Angelo Williams used to do on the Steelers. We don't know that Benny Snell is going to be the guy, but whoever's going to be that guy, if something happens to James Conner or if he ultimately opts out, I think all the beat reports I'm reading and stuff like that, it looks like Benny Snell seems to be getting a lot of love out there in Pittsburgh.
And I just timed out one of my drafts, so bad on me. What happens when you're doing 5 hours of media stuff? So, oh well. Apologies.
You're not doing enough, Bob.
So as we roll on, Emil now, Zach Moss. I knew this was going to come at some point, and so I did not mention him for that very reason that I knew it was coming. And Preston Williams, a guy that we both like. But talk about your Zach Moss pick.
Well, you can tell the story about your communication with the Buffalo Bills also, but he could actually, be a fairly productive back this year, and he could help me out perhaps maybe early in the season before Dobbins, really becomes a starter. So I like him. I didn't think I could last all the way to the bottom of the 10th, so I just decided it was time to get him. Was pretty rich at wide receiver, and I took Preston Williams 2 picks later, 3 picks later. So I'm balanced well. Whether balance matters, eventually it'll matter.
It will indeed. And so we're hoping, I'll tell you the story with Mike Shope from WGR in Buffalo, had him on the show. He's a big fantasy player as well. And he basically said the only guy he was drafting at value from Buffalo was Zach Moss. And this from a guy who covers the team on a daily basis. So I thought that was worth noting. I mean, not that everyone there is not going to do anything, just at the price points that everyone is going at, that was the player he's drafting. So there is that. So Emil still has a need at quarterback. Jen still has a need at quarterback. How late are we thinking we're going to wait?
What do you think, Jen?
I mean, all right. So just looking at the queue right now, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers are still sitting there. So I can wait. I don't know about you.
Well, I've got a lot of guys. I don't want to talk about them while we're in the middle of the draft, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to wait a little more. What do we have here? 8 now? 8 quarterbacks gone. I'll bring up something interesting. You guys were talking about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and Godwin went in the 3rd round. Evans went 2 picks later. If those guys are that high, is Tom Brady undervalued right now?
Yeah. Sort of has to be, right? I mean, it goes back when Odell Beckham was a top quarterback. Eli Manning was top wide receiver. Eli Manning was on waivers in like some of my home leagues, and I'm like, guys, if Odell Beckham's catching all these touchdowns, I mean, the guy who's throwing it, right? He's got to have some help too.
We'll see how far he goes.
do this every year, though. We have these discussions about some quarterback. If we love all these guys, why don't we love this guy? And I honestly, I mean, I think we probably should be okay with Brady, but I love getting him at a discount. As Jen picks Emmanuel Sanders. So let's look at Emil's team. Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, Zach Moss at running back, DeAndre Hopkins, Kenny Golladay, Cooper Kupp, Darius Slayton at wide receiver, and Preston Williams and Zach Ertz at tight end. Pretty good balance, some upside, some.
And you guys talked about players that may help you in your championship. This is not really one of them, but Jen talked about Sterling Shepard, being a problem with his concussions. That's why I took Darius Slayton in the 7th round, because I think he may become maybe a number one, if not a number one tie wide receivers this year for the Giants.
Yeah, I think that's something that a concussion like Nick Chubb right now is in the concussion protocol. That's the first one we've heard about. Although I suspect anyone who's played football more than a week has probably had more than one concussion. I'm exaggerating, but if you've played a lifetime of football, you've had concussions. But it's these guys that get the reported concussions that it becomes an issue, and they've been in the protocol multiple times. Sterling Shepard, there was even some talk last year that maybe he would consider retiring as a young son, has done well. So those are things that should come into play a little bit. Again, on Emmanuel Sanders, we don't see often wide receiver 2s have an impact in New Orleans because wide receiver 1's pretty amazing. The running back's pretty amazing. Can Sanders change that, crack the code a little bit?
I do think he can. He has wide receiver 1 talent on a team behind Michael Thomas, and as long as the Saints continue to put up 35-plus points a game, you got to figure Emmanuel Sanders is going to be on the receiving end of some of that production.
Yeah, I would guess as well.
And Emil, I love that pick.
Which pick is that?
Slayton. I'm so high on him this year. Ooh, and Gatton just stole Noah Fant from me. He was my next pick.
He's a nice sleeper this year, isn't he?
Oh boy, do I think I think he's my highest owned player. I think he's got top 5 potential. Yeah, his yards after the catch. He's like I don't want to compare the two because it's crazy too. But he when I watch him play football, it reminds me of George Kittle.
That's good. He could get some targets this year.
Oh yeah.
And we're starting to get into that range of tight ends. So I think the interesting thing about Fant for me is he was tight end 16 last year, but 24th in targets. If that share increases some, could be very interesting. Austin Hooper, how do you feel about him? You guys start with you, Jen, or I'll start with Emil since you're about to make a pick. But going into that offense where there are already established weapons, they paid him a ton of money. Was briefly the highest paid tight end in the league until last week. But what kind of role do you expect?
Well, again, it's the problem with Cleveland is he got an incredible amount of talent, and Baker has to take it to the next level. He's got to get to a point where they can start scoring more, and then everybody's going to get more points. And they need that for everybody, including Hooper, to, be worth his draft pick. Obviously, it was incredible in Atlanta, but how is it going to work in Cleveland? I see an issue there, but you're getting him pretty late. What is he, 11th tight end, 10th tight end?
Yeah,
that's pretty late.
We've seen the flop. So, Mike Dempsey, our co-host on Sirius XM, is huge on Hayden Hurst, has been pushing. Are we going too hard into Hayden Hurst, Jen? Is it getting to that point anyway?
I don't think we are because my argument against Hooper is I'm sort of backing off a player like him because I want to see how much he's a product of the system. The Falcons tight ends have just always there were weeks where Levine, Tuileolo, had tight end 1 weeks. I think Falcons tight end is a valuable role. I'm curious to see what Hayden Hurst does in it. I'm curious to see what Austin Hooper does outside of that offense.
They heavily target the tight ends there, and they have in the past. I think that's what we're counting on in that regard. So, Emil, you're coming up here. Any particular strategies you're thinking of? Is this time to add a little more depth at the position you have the least? Or, look, I mean, we look at team 4 or team 3 that has just 3 running backs, but they're all super high end, right? Maybe taking a running back there. Are there any guys in your queue that you feel comfortable with at this price point?
Well, everything's it's a crazy time. I may take my quarterback, although I probably don't have to because team 1 has already got 2, so I can wait till the turn to decide. I'm seriously looking at DeAndre Washington, and there's a couple of receivers. I don't think I need to double up at quarterback yet. So, hey, it's my pick. So I guess I better decide. I'm going to take DeAndre Washington because he could end up being productive with a rookie in Hilaire and a great team like that. He could end up being very productive. So there I go with another running back.
Would you view him as a potential league winner then? Just, as a guy that could maybe come in if something happens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah, I hit the wrong button. I hit Darrell Henderson and DeAndre Washington. So just for the listeners, I wanted DeAndre Washington there. Now, say that question again.
Just in general, these are guys you're considering potential league winners, and he's still available for you if you want to double up there. But a guy that's just an injury away from what we believe to be a featured role.
Well, he could. He's not an incredible back, but he's a pretty darn good back. And, I mean, who was Damian Williams when he left, Miami to come to Kansas City? He was nobody. He was a nobody.
And that's, I think that's kind of my point is, look, when you're drafting this late, you're taking shots, but running back in this offense, and we did see a 3-game run where he took over for Josh Jacobs last year when Jacobs was hurt for Oakland, and he was pretty damn productive, certainly was capable of carrying the ball or carrying a heavy workload, also has a connection from college with Pat Mahomes, so a lot of things working in DeAndre Washington's favor. I had Pete Sweeney from Arrowhead Pride on the Football Diehards on NFL Radio 2 weeks ago, and he talked about this. He thought DeAndre Washington was a guy before they drafted Edwards-Helaire who was going to make a serious push for playing time alongside Damian Williams. So just an interesting note there that he seems to be the guy. Look, there's a lot of guys there. There's 3 guys there that could be viable. And here's another guy. So we see Tony Pollard. Get the Ezekiel Elliott owner gets his handcuff. Good move there. Damian Harris goes here, a guy that's been getting some good run in practice the last couple of days. We'll see by the way, the Dalvin Cook manager also has Alexander Madison. So the handcuffers are in full force in this league. Emil, how cover are these prices you're paying? We've got Madison going in round 9. We have Pollard going in round 11. These are pretty comfortable prices for handcuffs, no?
Oh, sure. I mean, those are great prices. Right now, you're in the phase in the draft where you don't worry about that. You're just worrying about if I want to take a Pollard, is somebody going to take him before me? And you're not worried about the ADP, but maybe the feel of the draft. And you've spent a high number 1 pick on Elliott, so why not have a Pollard to give you some safety? Sometimes I forget about handcuffs, and they can be very valuable. Boy, right. Higbee in the 11th round, that's one of my sleepers.
Yeah, that's about as late as I've seen him go for a while, you guys, is maybe some of the lesser. I mean, guys like Hawkinson, who's having issues with his ankle that, we're hearing about now, where he says he's still not 100% from an injury that ended him on IR last year. And he says he's still not quite at full speed. That's a little worrisome. Jared Cook, a guy who came on late last year, or late every year, I guess would be a fair point.
All right, Jen took her for quarterback.
Explain yourself with the Cam Newton.
I mean, I got the goal line back of the New England Patriots. He also happens to be the quarterback. I can't fathom a scenario unless he can't walk where Cam Newton is not the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots with the best coach in football, with Julian Edelman, with James White. I mean, Cam, if he plays 16 games, I mean, he's Cam. He's easily a top 10 quarterback for me. Very much can flirt with top 5. And again, goal line goal line roll. I mean, when they're first and inches or fourth and inches, whatever it is, we all know what he's doing, and he's hopping over the pile and scoring a touchdown.
That is the frosting on the cake with him.
Talked to Courtney Fallon of WEEI in Boston today. She feels pretty much the same, that they're going to play this competition out, but the probably pretty much a foregone conclusion. And also, this just ends. It's a very good coaching staff. They're liable to figure out the best ways to use them. Just because they've done the same thing the last 20 years with a guy who's super good at what he did the last 20 years doesn't mean they aren't capable of making adjustments. We saw Josh McDaniels make that adjustment with Tim Tebow in Denver, correct?
Sure, and maybe I'm too high on Cam Newton. I just can't envision a world where Brian Hoyer and Jared Stidham beat him out in a quarterback competition.
I'm with you there.
So this is a mock. Oh, hey, look, your Joshua Kelly just went in the 11th round.
I like an awful lot. Well, Justin Jackson went also here, I see. So
I think Shepard was a timeout.
Coach Lambo would like us to talk about the battle between Watkins and Hardman. I don't know if it's a battle so much. And by the way, Justin Jackson and Josh Kelly going off one after the other. My flag is planted on Kelly. You could make some good arguments for Jackson, the veteran who's been there as well, and it's to be determined. Maybe we'll watch Hard Knocks tonight to find out more about that. Wanted to talk about the battle, or the Coach Lambo wanted to hear about the battle between Watkins and Hardman. I don't know if it's a battle. I think it's just like, there are going to be weeks where one of those guys has a good game, and many weeks where none of them has a good game. We've seen it with Sammy Watkins. I don't know, just the target totals. I don't think there's going to be a consistent move. Maybe Hardman takes a step forward, but they kept Watkins around. Emil, do you see this differently?
No, I don't. It's a tough scenario. Even though they score so much points on that team, we're really not sure, if somebody steps up and be really valuable from week to week fantasy-wise.
Yeah, the heavy workloads tend to funnel through the top guys, just like the Saints offense. So I just think you're basically taking your chances. I think in best ball, that's fine. I think in season long, it's a tough call to make every week. I'm not sure when you'd want to start them. Based on inside info from camps, and Jen, just quickly, do you disagree with any of that? Is there one of those that you prefer to the other? Is it maybe Demarcus Robinson, maybe Byron Pringle?
No, I mean, outside of Tyreek Hill, it's a crapshoot. I would say all the Kansas City wide receivers outside of Tyreek Hill are best ball, and if you're playing a lot of best ball, try to spread your exposure. I picked Sammy Watkins on my team. I just kind of liked him there. I had in no way intended to stack Chiefs receivers. Just sort of went from there. And he's one of those picks, I look at it and I see some of the receivers that went after him, and I'm like, it's one of those picks after you do it, you don't love it, but I went for it.
I honestly feel like any week it could be any of those guys, and so the coach wants to know if we should stay away. No, don't stay away, just don't overpay. Based on inside info from camp, is there anyone out there that's going to shock the world? Boy, Jerick McKinnon draws more rave reviews than anybody. We haven't seen him play for 2 years. I think you're taking your chances there, but he was brought into San Francisco to be something. He hasn't had a chance to be it. Maybe he gets to be that. Brandon Ayuk's another guy that's drawing rave reviews there. There are tons of guys around the league drawing rave reviews. Damian Harrison, is getting all the reps at running back. So that makes sense. Jalen Rager's drawing some big reviews. Anybody you're hearing about, Jen, that anything you're hearing about anyone that's maybe has you moving them up your draft board?
Not right now, only because I think I hate falling victim to the Twitter highlight. You know what I mean? You watch these highlights that the beats put out on Twitter, and all of a sudden, you buy into hype. And if you're drafting in enough leagues and you're paying attention to news while you're drafting, you can see how news sort of influences ADP. So I got to say the camp reports aren't really moving too many people up for me. The only one that I saw recently, and this might be a little bit of a bias because I follow the Cowboys so closely, was just seeing that CeeDee Lamb is going to be returning kicks. That's big for me when you have a receiver who's a factor in special teams as well. So I would say that puts him up a little bit more for me, but that's really it.
I think we've been seeing, this is the time of year, and if you have not, go to the footballdiehards.com website and check out the August camp news. You will find literally 30, 40, 50, some days updates with all those tidbits that you're looking for and you're interested in as we head into the 13th round, taking Nyheim Hines. And Emil Kadlec has done one of our favorite tricks, getting a pair of quarterbacks late, in this case Daniel Jones and Ryan Tannehill. Emil, on Ryan Tannehill, we love Daniel Jones' upside and think he's a good, kind of sleeper play. Why is Ryan Tannehill going so late?
We don't trust him. He played so poorly for Miami, and he finally came on last year, and he was a top 5 quarterback for the whole second half of the season. And, of course, you're worried that they're going to run with Henry more, which they did last year, and he still was a top 5 quarterback. So those two combinations are just scaring people away. Now, with a short run, we're mocking to 14 rounds. If we had a 15, 16 round league, I may not have taken a second quarterback. So I'm taking him as the assumption I have an 18 to 20 man roster. That's why I took 2 quarterbacks like that. Also, Daniel Jones, may not play that well early on. He's got a tough schedule early, so Tannehill can help me out early on, and I can play little streaming quarterbacks.
All right, we're coming into the tail end of this draft, a round and a half to go.
And Jen, what did Jen get there in the 12th round? She got her tight end.
I did. So I went with Doyle. Yeah, I passed on a few. I think what we could consider upside tight ends for a guy with a real perceived high floor. Really excited to see what Philip Rivers does with him. We know how he's treated tight ends in the past. So I think Doyle's a guy I think people are sleeping on. When I don't get no fan, I'm looking at a guy like Doyle.
Bryce Love.
A question here is: any of us think Andy Isabella will have an opportunity to have a steady wide receiver role in the Cardinals' offense this year? I don't. Wide receiver 4, it's hard for me to go that deep, but I think he's still a good developmental player. Anybody see that differently?
I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bob. And really, you have DeAndre Hopkins there. You have Larry Fitzgerald, who, I compare him to an Adrian Peterson almost. As long as he's playing real life football, he has a fantasy role. Christian Kirk, just kind of seems to be the odd guy out.
All right, we're rolling into the final round here. Drew Lock, an interesting play. Ben Roethlisberger, some of these guys obviously have upside. I'm surprised Matthew Stafford making it as far as he did, and Tom Brady, but this was a late quarterback draft. I mean, we saw it when I mentioned, that seventh round when we had the series of quarterbacks go off. Just interesting that was when that started, and then kind of everyone went later. I mean, you're seeing Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield all in around 9, Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton around 11, then Stafford, Jones, and Brady in round 12, and then we go down and we're getting Ryan Tannehill's, Joe Burrows. I mean, not that these guys wouldn't all get drafted maybe at this point. It just seems like they're normally more spread out in drafts. Anyone bullish on Philip Rivers this year, Jen?
Oh yeah, I've been drafting Philip Rivers for what feels like 10 years at this point. I mean, he's a starting quarterback. I mean, here's the thing with Rivers: he's not going to get you those huge weeks, but he's a solid high-end QB2 who's going to have QB1 weeks, and he's one of these guys. I mean, especially in a super flex, you can just sort of set it and forget it with him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's to be the case, and he just went off just before your selection there. I don't know if he'll be drafted to Kobe. No. I like an interesting pick. Ito Smith getting a little buzz today about a good change of direction, working behind Todd Gurley. What kind of value do you think he might have? Standalone or?
I'm not really looking at him necessarily for standalone. He's more next guy up for a very, very talented running back with some injury issues. We spoke earlier a little bit about handcuffs. I love the idea of handcuffing somebody else's stud running back. That way I'm not eating up the roster spot, and I sort of block them from having it. So when I'm looking for running back handcuffs, I'm not looking to handcuff my RB1, which is why I was passing on a guy like Jamal Williams, and I went with a guy like Smith.
We get through this. You're through, Jed, so I'll ask you this question. We have someone on the YouTube, Unifolk, who seems to be remarkably enamored with Team 10, the Travis Kelce, George Kittle team. And they want to know if you trade your entire team for that team over yours. And I'm thinking that team looks good at the first 2 picks. Beyond that, I love Chris Carson. Beyond that, meh.
Yeah, the running backs are a little. I mean, here's the thing: if Kerryon Johnson turns out to be the guy, then it worked out great. But it's interesting. I mean, look how a team. Let's look at the upside of this team and the way it shakes out. You got a guy like Carson who's going to have the volume. Mari Cooper, Cortland Sutton, he's a wide receiver one on his team. Maybe Singletary takes that second-year leap. Marvin Jones will always be there. If you look at this team, starting with a 2 tight end start and the 2 big tight ends, there's no glaring hole on this roster. I like it. It's an interesting strategy to start off going with those 2 guys. Don't know that I'd trade my whole team for it, but I like the team that Chris drafted.
I wouldn't trade my team. However, it'd be really neat to see how these work, because I like to see people go kind of way out there and do different things and see how they work. Cooper could be great. Sutton could be great. Marvin Jones always seems to do better than you think. And truthfully, Carson Wentz and Matthew Stafford are kind of like my 2 favorite quarterbacks that slipped through my fingers, and I had other ones, so I wasn't worried. But, like Jen said, he's going to need a Kerryon Johnson or maybe a Bryce Love, maybe an Alan Lazard to come out and be productive. And, if he watches the waiver wire and steals a really good player, he could end up really fighting for the championship.
Right. And to be fair, the person asking that question is the person drafting that team.
Oh.
Not terribly surprising that we got that. So, Emil's finishing up with your last pick, Alshon Jeffrey, a guy I've been grabbing late in so many drafts. Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher, both with InsideTheBirds.com, have talked about the possibility that he is going to, if he's not ready week 1, he's not going to open camp on the PUP. So he could be ready at any time, and I'm not sure, that people are definitely overlooking him as well. So now that the teams are drafted, final picks being made here, just Emil, if you'd care to comment on how you think your team, how you fared in this one.
Well, just in general, first off, I think these people drafted real well. Look at Carlos Hyde with that last pick in the 14th. You got Anthony Miller on team 1. Those are really good late round picks that could be very valuable players. My team, it's not bad. I got Ertz in the 5th. Now, if I'd have known Tyler Higbee would have lasted to the 11th round, I would have changed. But of course, 2020 is perfect hindsight. I like what I did. I took some of my players that I like. I took Slayton a little early because of the long distance all the way around. I figured he wouldn't be left. Moss was a fun pick. Preston Williams, another good probability. And DeAndre Washington, guys. And I got my late quarterbacks that I feel pretty comfortable about. I would have liked to get in Stafford. He kind of got snuck before me, so that's what I'm at.
Jen, bless you. How was your team turn out? How do you feel in hindsight now as you look it over and compare it with some of the others?
I mean, it's like any other team. I look at it, and there's things I love, and there's things I hate. I hate that I have Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins. That was I think I spoke about it. It was one of those picks where I was like, ugh. The minute I did it, I didn't like it. Flip side, I love stacking Cam Newton and N'Keal Harry. And I love where I got Odell Beckham. I'm happy to have Adam Thielen where I got him. I really like Philip Lindsay's upside. He seems to be a guy where he just won't give the job up. So I'll take it. It's interesting, in a 14 team, I wish we could kind of see who's left in the player pool and the sort of talent that went undrafted in this one.
Yeah, of course it's 14. We didn't go all the way to 16 or 15 or 18 just for time purposes. And by the way, on our site, we have Rate My Teams. We have a professional one that's part of the Premier, and we have one that you can just cut and paste your players into or select your players. And the professional one, it pulls the whole league in, so you get a perspective of how it feels your team is with respect to everybody else's team, which I think is probably more important.
Any other teams jump out to either of you? We'll start with you, Emil. What teams not named yours do you find especially appealing?
Good question. Let me look real quick here. I'm just glancing at the third team. Got the 3 running backs in a row. Metcalf. He got Hollywood Brown, which is kind of a very curious player. Landry's a great steady player. And then he got Russell Wilson in the 7th. That's very nice. Debo could end up being really good. That's not a bad team right there. Tom Brady late as a backup quarterback. Yeah, that's a good pick. He also got Armstead. Obviously, if Leonard Russell has a problem, Armstead's going to be a guy who could get a lot of touches. That's not a bad team.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette, of course, and I think there's some talk there. Do we know for sure in Carolina who the real handcuff is? I think that's an interesting one as well. Raquel Armstead is definitely the guy there. Chris Thompson will chip in. But behind Christian McCaffrey, we've heard talk, Reggie Bonifant was it last year, but now it sounds like Mike Davis is in the mix there. Jen, if you were drafting, if you felt like you needed to handcuff McCaffrey, would you, or would you just avoid it and pass on it knowing that you don't really know?
100% pass. If something happens to Christian McCaffrey, I think the odds that you're going to see a committee are much, much stronger that one of these guys are just going to run away with the job.
That's an interesting point. But when you go to Kansas City, what Damian Williams did the last year, your handcuff there may be more viable. The way Kansas City approaches, the ability for average running backs to do well.
Yeah, totally.
I think they're, go ahead, Jay.
Sorry, my dog's chewing on my flip-flop. What I was going to say was when I'm looking at handcuff opportunities, I'm looking more at the offense. I'm looking to handcuff an Andy Reid RB1, a Pittsburgh Steelers RB1, a Dallas Cowboys RB1. Those are the guys, those are the offenses where if their stud goes down, you pretty much guaranteed that offense isn't going to change all that much, and it's like a true next man up.
I would agree. More questions?
Thank
you, Coach. Appreciate you. And if you are watching on the YouTube, we are sending out invites. We send out invites to subscribers every day for these Ask Me Anythings that we're doing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern, and Tuesday and Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern, including the mock drafts, and we'll continue doing those. I had one question. With the risk I had at wide receiver, do you like the combo of Cobb and Fuller? This is Michael Silvas. I like the way this team came out, man. I really do. I think Allen Robinson gives you the high floor. I think the combination of, I think the combination of Will Fuller and A.J. Green is a huge upside play right by itself. I think adding that Randall Cobb in, kind of opinions mixed on him. I do think it gives you a piece of that offense if something happens to Fuller, and we all know how that goes. I think at some point you're going to be playing the waiver wire at wide receiver, but very solid, heavy at running back. And in this environment, you guys, just get your thoughts, Jen. The COVID environment, is running back maybe the position to leverage for days when somebody doesn't show up? Is that the position where it's going to be easiest for someone to come in and really produce?
I almost think wide receivers might have an easier time producing, but you are definitely going to see teams where these running backs are going to come in and all of a sudden have a big role. I don't think that we're not going to see a scenario by like week 8 or 9 of this year where you have a guy who was, working a quote unquote day job on Tuesday and starting at the NFL on Sunday. These are just things we kind of prepare ourselves for.
Yeah, well, things we're going to have to deal with. I do think, I know I talked to Mike Tagliere a while back, and that was one of his points, is running backs is one of the more, positions where guys are going to be able to come in, fill in. He's going running back heavier or a little deeper on his drafts. Looking for a few more questions before we call it a night on this one. Again, we'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for an Ask Me Anything. We'll take all your questions and strategy, personnel, news, anything you have of interest.
And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yep. Mentioned that in the chat, but we'll mention it again. There is a button just below the screen. Hit subscribe. You'll get all the notifications when we go live, post new videos, and we are posting videos throughout. Go to the website, footballdiehards.com. If you're not a subscriber, go to free trial, footballdiehards.com/free trial. And take a tour, see what we got to offer. And right now our August update premium content is available. It's our preseason draft guide. Tons of articles, videos, news, notes, information, constantly updated rankings, etc. available. That'll roll right into the regular season with our flash update. If you have subscribed before and are just realizing you haven't yet, go to the order page, use the promo code Diehards to get a 15% discount, gets you access to our digital magazines. The magazines are out on newsstands. The Fantasy Football Pro Forecast 31st season made it onto newsstands in these unique times. And the 20th anniversary Football Diehards magazine is also available out there and available on the website. Just go to the order page. You can get everything we have on our order page, secure, safe, and they'll be delivered to you, the magazines, first-class mail, in fairly short order. One last question here from Michael Silvius. Do you like the idea of stacking quarterback and tight end? Like in best ball, you tried it here. Thoughts? I did it in the auction for the Kings Classic last week, and I kind of did it intentionally. It was one of my plans going in. I got Kelsey and Mahomes, and I do like it. I don't mind it at all, but it's got to be the right quarterback and the right tight end. Jen?
Yeah, I agree 100%. If you have one of these tight ends who, again, they're more like a de facto wide receiver one, or they get these targets that you would typically see wide receivers get, then to me, it's the same as stacking a quarterback and a wide receiver. So, yeah, I like it in the right situation for sure.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So there we have it, everybody. Again, watch your emails for notifications if you're subscribers. If you're not subscribers, why not? You should be. And if you're not a subscriber to the website, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You will get notifications when we go live as your settings allow. And we will be live every single day, five days a week anyhow, throughout the month of August. And we'll figure out our regular season schedule as we get into the regular season. Scheduled to start September 10th. So it's right around the corner, kids. Hit the footballdiehards.com website for any news and information that you might need. And we'll see you back here again tomorrow. Thanks, Emil. Thanks, Jen.
Wonderful time.
Guys, thanks so much for having me.